Donald Trump's trade deal with the European Union was more than just a headline, it was a calculated move to reset a long unbalanced relationship. For decades, the US ran trade deficits while European products flooded American markets, often protected by red tape and double standards. But Trump's approach wasn't about playing nice, it was about playing smart. From unlocking agricultural exports like soybeans to positioning American energy as a key supplier to Europe, the deal wasn't just tough, it was transformative. This wasn't politics as usual, it was economic warfare fought with strategy and leverage. In this video, we break down how the deal worked, who benefited, and why it still matters. In an era defined by economic uncertainty, shifting global alliances, and rising protectionism, one trade agreement stood out not just for its boldness, but for its results. Donald Trump's trade deal with the European Union, though controversial in its framing, delivered a set of outcomes that left a clear impact on American farmers, manufacturers, and consumers alike. While critics may focus on headlines, tariffs, and personality-driven politics, the numbers and strategic positioning reveal something far more nuanced, a trade deal that worked for American interests, rebalanced long-standing inequalities, and reminded global institutions that the United States would no longer tolerate one-sided agreements. 4 years before the Trump administration, the United States had grappled with a consistent trade imbalance with the European Union. American companies face significant regulatory barriers, while European exports often flowed into the US with fewer restrictions. Whether it was agriculture, automotive, or steel, US producers repeatedly sounded the alarm over what they saw as unfair competition and bureaucratic obstruction on the part of Brussels. Trump's trade team, led by US Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, made clear that this would no longer be accepted as normal. Instead of incremental fixes, they aimed for structural change, and they got it. One of the deal's most significant wins was the EU's agreement to increase its imports of American soybeans and liquefied natural gas, LNG. For US farmers, especially those hit hard by trade tensions with China, this came as a critical lifeline. European markets had long been tough to crack due to regulatory barriers and alternative suppliers, but under Trump's deal, soybean exports surged, helping stabilize prices and restore confidence in rural communities that had felt abandoned by globalization. Similarly, the LNG commitment allowed the US to position itself as a key energy player on the continent, reducing Europe's dependence on Russian energy, a move that would prove prescient in the years to come. Then came the industrial side of the deal, where US manufacturers had long complained about strict European standards that effectively blocked access to the market. While Trump's deal did not erase all barriers, it pushed the EU to reconsider its regulatory stance on certain American products and created a channel for ongoing negotiations focused on harmonization and market access. By using tariff threats strategically, Trump's administration forced the EU to the table without plunging the global economy into chaos, a delicate balancing act that critics never believed was possible, but that played out with careful calculation. Perhaps the most overlooked aspect of the deal was its political impact. For the first time in decades, European leaders had to reckon with an American administration that treated trade not as charity or diplomacy, but as hard business. Trump redefined the negotiation dynamic, replacing the old consensus-driven approach with an unapologetic focus on leverage, reciprocity, and results. His insistence that America was no longer going to be taken advantage of wasn't just rhetoric, it became a principle guiding every clause, every demand, and every headline-making moment. The agreement also introduced a framework for further negotiations, establishing working groups to resolve disputes, streamline product certifications, and expand cooperation in technology and standards. It was not a full-blown free trade agreement, but rather a strategic reset, one that put America back in control of the terms. And unlike other trade pacts bogged down in years of bureaucratic delays, Trump's deal moved quickly and decisively, showing the world that results didn't have to wait for global summits or endless policy debates. For the American worker, this deal was a message: the era of exporting jobs and importing losses was over. Trump's administration focused on restoring domestic manufacturing, and the EU deal complemented that vision by leveling the playing field for American goods. While free trade purists balked at the nationalist tone, the results on the ground were undeniable: increased exports, new market access, and a rebalancing of power that tilted the scales back toward the United States. On the geopolitical front, the deal sent a strong signal to allies and rivals alike. By engaging the EU as a partner but refusing to shy away from confrontation when necessary, Trump set the tone for a more assertive American presence on the global economic stage. This wasn't isolationism, it was strategic nationalism, where America's interests came first, but not at the cost of international stability. The success of the deal with the EU helped lay the groundwork for broader shifts in trade dynamics, including tougher stances toward China, renegotiation of NAFTA into the USMCA, and a reawakening of domestic industry pride. Even Europe, despite initial resistance, quietly acknowledged the benefits. Access to competitively priced American LNG helped diversify their energy supply. Engagement with U.S. agricultural markets offered consumer choice and helped balance their own dependency chains. And perhaps most importantly, the deal created a model of assertive negotiation that reshaped how Brussels approached trade not only with the U.S., but with other major economies as well. Of course, no agreement is perfect. The Trump-EU deal still left some issues unresolved, and some sectors continued to face difficulties. But what it achieved, in terms of realignment, leverage, and national confidence, marked a major shift in how trade was handled. It proved that tough talk, when backed by strategy, could force long overdue changes and protect domestic industries that had been neglected for far too long. Now, years later, as other administrations attempt to manage the complex trade landscape, Trump's approach stands as a blueprint for high-pressure, high-impact diplomacy. It showed that America did not have to accept disadvantage as the price of global engagement. It reminded the world that the U.S. was not afraid to defend its workers, its products, and its economic sovereignty. And it proved that bold leadership, even when unpopular in elite circles, can produce real, measurable outcomes for the country. For millions of Americans who felt left behind by the global economy, this deal was proof that someone in power was finally listening. For the farmers, the energy producers, the factory workers, and the small businesses trying to compete on the global stage, it was more than a headline, it was a turning point.